Well, during this weekend, I had a great time meeting the Bostons. The Canadians always want to meet the people that have that Boston accent. And it was amazing. I could sit there and just listen to them talk all day. That's how cool it was. I'm telling you, it was amazing. I got to learn how to talk like that. It's great. But I am Canadian, so am I allowed to teach you a Canadian word? Can I teach you a Canadian word? You don't know this one. I don't think you do. So, okay, a winter hat. You guys know winter hats? We call them toques. All right, so if I'm going to go and I'm going to get a toque. Right, so that's the Canadian word of the day for you guys. So enjoy, use it. Toque. There you go. Today I have a privilege of talking to you guys about something awesome, something that's really close to my heart, and it's practical living. Taking your spiritual life and living it out practically. And what they've asked me to do is I'm actually really excited. Actually, warning: when I get excited, you might get scared. I run around. I yell, it's kind of funny, but you guys might get scared. Some of you might not like it, but hey, it's awesome. So they wanted me to share a little bit of a testimony. I'm excited to do that because you guys get to know a little bit about me, but also you'll get to see why I'm so excited about a practical living. Why I'm so passionate about living out Jesus, not just spiritually, not just that one time a week where you go to church and you get this knowledge and it's awesome, but taking it and living it out, going out into the world with your friends, to school, your workplaces, and it's great to actually live. And this is what I kind of want to tell you my testimony, a little bit about myself. It's not the whole thing, but just so you could see that living out a life is not something that we can do in our strength. We need God's strength. We need God's guidance, because if it wasn't for God, I would not be a Christian. Standing here in this place proclaiming the name of Jesus, I just wouldn't do that if it wasn't for God. But He changed my heart, and He changed my mind. He transformed me and into a place where I could actually stand up here and say, I'm so proud to be a Christian. I'm so proud to call myself a disciple of Jesus Christ, and this is why I want you to know a little bit more about me. I was, like it was said before, I was risen in a Christian family, but that means nothing. You know, you could be born into a Christian family, and we all know certain friends that were born into Christian families, and they kind of did their own thing afterwards. I was that kind of guy. I was born into a Christian family, but if you're going to ask my dad, how long were we as a family, a Christian family? He would probably say maybe 5 years or something. And I had a talk with my dad about that. He says, we've worn the name Christian for all our lives. But to actually live out the faith, it was not that long ago. So I was born into a Christian family. It was great, and that's all I knew. I went to church every time, and it was somewhere in Russia. I don't even know where I was born. I'm a confused little man. So somewhere in Russia, Belarus, I think, right? So somewhere there. Belarus, we got another Belarusian. Right on. So I was born there, somewhere there, and all I knew was Christian stuff. I knew farming. I was like a little kid, so I didn't really know how to farm, but that lifestyle, I was really used to it. And then we decided to come to Canada, and my dad came here, kind of set up the lifestyle, and this is something that I don't hear in a lot of testimonies, and I want to share it with you, that my first experience in a non-believing environment. Since all I knew was God, since all I knew was Jesus, my parents would always read me these stories of David and Goliath, all these Noah, and the animals. It was kind of cool, but the first environment that was in a non-believing place was school. And it was very confusing for me because I didn't understand. I'm like, how in the world can these people not believe in God? Right? There's so much cool stuff. There's so many cool stories, and they're true, and they're amazing. How can these people not believe in God? And I remember this one day we had to get, there was an assignment. And the assignment was, because I didn't know how to read, we had to go home, and we had to get our parents to read a story for us. And we'd come back, and we'd talk about that story. So this one time I went home, like, Mom, I'm so excited. I'm going to be telling people about a story. Can you read me one of those cool stories? So she read me a story, I forget exactly, I think it was David and Goliath because it was my favorite one. So she read me that story. And I come into class and I stand in front of the classroom and I'm telling these people about David and Goliath, right? And my teacher, she did not like that. When I was smaller, I didn't really understand like atheism. I didn't really understand different beliefs. I didn't understand. All I knew is like she hated me for telling that story. What did I do wrong? And in that time, that teacher was starting to get angry at me all the time, just I guess knowing that I was a Christian family, and she would emotionally abuse me. She would let the kids pick on me every time I would tell the teacher that somebody's picking. She wouldn't do anything. And I would go home, I would complain to my parents, and my parents would come back to school, and they didn't know much Russian, right? So the teacher said, "Oh no, he's a good child. He's always well behaved. Everything's okay." And my parents didn't really see the truth in this whole thing. And what I learned was it was a lot easier to pretend that I did not know God than to live out God. As a kid, I'm like, it's just easier to pretend I don't know these stories. And that's what I did. Right? I pretended that I didn't believe in God. I just pretended. I went home, I listened to all these stories, but I pretended like I did. When it came to school, I did not know God. And as you guys know, habits are pretty easy to get. And I started getting into this lifestyle where I started becoming embarrassed of God. I started living a lifestyle where I got into the wrong group of friends. I got into the wrong group of things of doing, and I started doing all these wild things. And it was all because of my childhood, because I started pretending I did not know God. And it became a habit after a habit after a habit. Well, life went on, and I wasn't a really good guy. I was very angry as I was growing up. I wasn't too nice to my family. I was quite embarrassed to be with my family, actually, because I had this cool guy image to get. And mama around you, when mama calls you, "Mom, don't call me in front of my friends." It was kind of I started being embarrassed of my family, even. And I started getting these habits that aren't so good. And high school came. And when you get to high school, you have certain expectations to live up if you want to be a popular kid. You have these things you got to go to certain places, you got to do certain things, and I started getting these habits, and I started getting this lifestyle where I wanted to be cool, I had friends, and I needed to keep that status. So I was doing things I wasn't supposed to be doing, right? Just to be a popular kid. Looking back, I'm 25 years old. Looking back, I can't even remember when my high school career ended. It was so long ago, and I'm like, that went by so fast. And just to make a decision, a wrong decision that would just affect one small part of my life, but I would live with regret for a very long time. And I would always look back and go, man, I wish I did things differently. I wish I did that differently. And that differently. I wish I said something different to these people. I wish I hung out with way different people that didn't have such a bad influence on me. And this life kind of ended up, and I lost a few friends during my high school career from suicide, from getting hit by cars. It was just a rough lifestyle, and it's kind of I got used to it. I got really used to it. I still went to church. Because my dad goes to church, my mama went to church, my family, I still went to church. But that didn't mean anything. Just because you go to church, it does not mean that you live out a Christian lifestyle. It's just because you sit in the pews one time a week, maybe twice. It means nothing. I still went to church. I still listen to the same stories. I still listen to the pastor speak. I still listen to all that. But when Monday came, a whole lifestyle started just totally engulfing me. I did not think Christianity at that time was very attractive. The reason being is because I would go to church, I would see these people in church, and the reason why I didn't like it so much is because I see these people outside of church, and they're acting totally different. Right? They're not living up to what they're saying, and I thought Christianity at that time was so unattractive because it was a bunch of hypocrites. It was people not living up to their word. It was people that were saying one thing and totally living a whole different way. And I did not like Christianity because I could not find one Christian in my life outside of my family that would live up to that. But I didn't know many Christians actually, but would live up to what they say, to what they preach. This one day, I had an opportunity to meet a friend from a really long time ago. His name is Edgar. And Edgar, oh man, that guy's so cool. He I don't know how he stayed cool and stayed away from all that stuff. It was incredible. I'm like, how do you do this? Right? And I started going to school with him, and it was kind of cool to reunite with him again. And I saw something different in his life. And it's not what he said. I'm telling you, it's not that he preached Jesus at me. It's he was loving me. I was like, man, usually I have to do something for somebody to love me. I would have to go to a place where I have to hang out with certain people, and then they would only love me. Without money, nobody loves me, right? Without a status, nobody loves me. This guy just loves me. What is going on? And I started questioning this guy. I'm like, hey, man, what's up, right? Like, why are you so nice? How can you be so nice to people that aren't so nice to you? Well, anyway, we had a few discussions. I'm like, I don't want anything to do with that. I had my thing. I tried that out one time, and it wasn't for me. Christianity, it's just a lifestyle. It's not really anything, right? And it's cool for you, but it's just not a thing for me. Well, anyways, this one time, he was getting baptized. And he came up to me. He's like, Max, man, it means so much if you came to my baptism. And I'm like, really? Like, a baptism? You want me to go to your baptism? I might make fun of you. He's like, man, it means so much if you just be there. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, my whole theory about church, you have to get a suit on. You have to, look nice. And so I got all that. I was dressed up, and I come to this church, and everybody's casual. I'm like, oh, man, it's awkward already, right? So I'm standing, I'm like the only one dressed up. I'm like, this is great, right? And I'm standing there. They stand up. They sing their songs. It was different from what I was used to. Right, so I sit, and actually the whole time I stepped in that building, and I'm like, man, these people, this is weird. These people love me. Like, I feel so valued, and everybody's coming up to me. They never see me. They're like, how are you? What's your name? And they're so interested in my life. I'm like, this is weird. I don't know where these guys are coming from, right? So I sit down, and all of a sudden I sit down. The pastor gets me to stand up, and I'm like, really? You want me to stand up? And everybody claps for me. That was cool, right? I got applause, right? So I'm like, man, I feel so good. I sit back down, and when I sit back down in that seat, little did I know that would be the church that my whole life would be transformed in. When I sat down in that seat, little did I know that would be a church where I would start being proud to call myself a Christian. And when I sat, little did I know that one day in that church, I would be leading a youth that's so on fire for God. I did not know that when I came into that church. I'm still at that church, by the way. That church that was so nice to me, that guy that invited me there, and I see the fire of God. But the only reason why I saw that is because they lived it out. The only reason I saw why he was so different, is because he took his spiritual life and he totally lived it out, and it made me valued. It made me see that it's possible. It's not just a lifestyle of hypocrites. Even though there's hypocrites there, hey, there's people that don't live up. But I realized that this lifestyle is something amazing. It's so different from anything that the whole world kind of lives like. Because what they do is totally different. Now, I want you to get your pens out, your pencils, your lipstick, mascara, whatever you write with. All right? I need you to write one verse down. And it's in 1 John 2:6. 1 John 2, this is very important. This is the foundation of what I'll be speaking about. I'm not going to talk about it very much because it kind of says what it says. 1 John 2:6 says this, whoever claims to live in him must walk as Jesus did. 1 John chapter 2, verse 6. Whoever claims to live in him must walk as Jesus did. In other words, whoever says they're a Christian, whoever proclaims, whoever goes, I'm a Christian to everybody, right? Whoever thinks they have a relationship with God, whoever says that, hey, I know Jesus, whoever says that, hey, friends, I'm a Christian, whoever proclaims it, whoever just confesses that they're Christians, must walk as Jesus did. But proclaiming that you're a Christian, it ties you right away to a spiritual life. You're saying that there's a spiritual bond between you and God. If you say you're a Christian, everybody knows that. If I'm a Christian, if I say I'm a Christian, there's something that I have with God in a certain kind of way. And that's professing. If you're a Christian, that's a spiritual thing. And then that goes on, things build up, and you get to read the Bible, which is exciting, and you get to do stuff, right? That's the spiritual side of life. And if you say you have that, if you sit there one time a week in those chairs listening to a pastor and you go, yes, I'm that, you must walk as Jesus walked. I'm not making this stuff up. The Bible says so. So what you say you are, you have to live it out. There's a verse in the Bible that says when you're faith without deeds is dead. Right? If you have faith, if you have the spiritual, faith doesn't have a body. There's symptoms of faith. There's things that go, hey, this guy has faith or a girl has faith because they're doing this. Faith is a spiritual thing. But faith without deeds is dead. A spiritual life with no practical life is a dead life. Spiritual life without a practical life is a dead life. Now at this time I want to kind of pause. And I'm going to pull an old school on us. I'm going to get you to repeat something. Because I understand that there are people like me. Maybe one person in this audience is a person like me that have been through a lot of not very Jesus-like stuff. But at one point in my life, I had to stop looking at my past. And I had to start looking to my future. I had to stop making the past determine who I was. But I had to start making decisions to determine my future. I had to stop. So what we're going to do right now is you're going to repeat a sentence after me. And it's going to get you, and if you do this every morning, if it's not just repeating it, it's just the mindset. If you get to understand this sentence, you're going to start looking into your future. You guys ready? Okay. The rest of my life is going to be the best of my life. All right? Proclaim that every time because you're going to start looking into your future. And because of you speaking over your life, you will start making decisions that will make the rest of your life the best of your life. And the only way to do that is through the Bible, is through knowing Jesus, is through knowing and having a relationship spiritually and living it out practically. And at one point I had to understand that thing where I had to look forward instead of backwards. So if your past right now is just dawning on you, if your past is putting a guilt trip on you, start looking into your future because your future doesn't have to look like your past. You know that. You can start living life differently and it's not too late. Today is a good day to do that. Now we read this verse, whoever claims to live in him must walk as Jesus walked. There's a verse in the Bible, it's John chapter 1 verse 14. John chapter 1 verse 4, you could write that down, read it later. It talks about how Jesus, the Word became flesh. It was that sentence, the Word became flesh. Now, Jesus' brother, James, which is interesting when he puts a view on this because he has his own book, right? And his brother says this, hey, don't just listen to the Word, but do the Word. You know, don't just listen, don't just read it, don't just hear it, but actually when you hear it, it must be shown in your life. And this is why I'm up here, because it's possible to live out the Bible. The Word became flesh so that our flesh may become the Word. And it's possible because He gave us that example. It's possible because He says, hey, humans are able to live this out. As long as you take it in and do it. Practical life is very important to live out because it doesn't just affect you. It has nothing to do with you, but it has everything to do with the people around you. It has everything to do with your friends, with your workmates. It has everything to do with the people that look at you that you don't even know, that see you as a role model. It has everything to do with them. Because when they look at you, they will either go, hey, he lives up to it, he believes what he says, and he lives up to it. Or they're just going to see you as another one of those people walking around like a Christian that just wears that label, hey, I'm a Christian, but it's okay to do all this. Hey, I'm a Christian, but it's all right to do all this. Jesus has this awesome thing. We're going to look into Luke chapter 6, verse 32. Did you guys know that there is a love out there that doesn't count? That there's a love out there, you can love somebody, but it has no credit. It just doesn't count. There's a generosity out there that just does not count. It doesn't have no credit. It's just generosity. It's just love. It's just you liking somebody. Jesus touches upon that, and then he says, this is where my people are going to be separated from everybody else. Because I'm going to teach my people to live differently, not like anybody else in this world lives. And in chapter 6, verse 32, it says this, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? See, even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? See, even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to the sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. And that is where we start being a part of the rest of the world. This is the part where we start being looked at and going, there's something different in that person's life. And it's not much about your knowledge. Can you believe that? People could look at you and they could go, man, that guy knows a lot. Man, that lady, she knows so much, she could just talk this world out of slavery or whatever is in this world now. Those people just know everything. But that's not what's going to set you apart. What's going to set you apart is the way you live. If you live up to that knowledge, if you live up with that wisdom, that you have that knowledge and you're doing it. And you're walking the earth and you're doing it. Jesus says, hey, isn't it easy to love somebody that loves you? I know we all know that. Those people that look up to us, we love them. Right? When somebody gives us something, we love them. We love gifts. It's so easy to love those people. But in your life, have you ever had a person say something bad against you? Talk behind your back maybe and you found out. What feelings did you receive at that time when somebody did something just so bad? And that one person that just seems like their mission in life is just to ruin yours. And it's like you're like, that feeling. And it's not really love. Because that's where it stops, that love. But Jesus says there's something a little bit further than that. There's a love that counts. There's a love that's going to make you a role model. There's a love, there's a generosity, and there's a giving that you're about to do that when everybody looks, even though they don't believe in God, even though they want nothing to do with Christianity, but they're going to look at you and they're going to say, I want that. How in the world do you do that? How in the world are you so nice to that person that just ruined your life? How in the world where do you get that? And that's where Christians are separated from anything else. In the Bible, there's Jesus kind of talked about taking an extra mile. I'm not sure if you guys heard that part of the Bible. It's great. You guys have to hear it. There's a rule back in the ancient day, where a Roman soldier, if he's walking, he could stop anybody, any citizen, and he could go, hey, you're going to carry my stuff, my armor, or whatever they had for them to carry. But when they hit that 1 mile, they could drop it and they could go, I've carried a mile and I'm going away. They don't have to go past that mile. Mile is exactly what they needed to do. Jesus comes down and goes, hey, take an extra mile. Take an extra step. So with the Christians, they would be walking. I don't know. I didn't read. I didn't study way too much into it, if they actually did it or not. I don't know how to tell. But that was Jesus' teaching. Hey, so a Christian would be walking with that soldier, and then they pass that mile, and they keep walking. The soldier's like, huh? You have to stop. Yeah, I want to talk to you. Come on. Can you imagine how that soldier would feel? Can you imagine how different that is from everybody else? See, you could have walked that first mile with love just like anybody else. And when that mile was done, you could go, hey, soldier, this is yours now. It was a pleasure meeting you, and you walk away. But you know what will change that soldier's perspectives on you. Not just to walk that mile with that love that has no credit, but to take that further step and go, hey, I'm going to carry it even further than you. I'm going to go out of my way for you. I'm going to take my selfish desires and put them aside. I'm going to worry about you a little bit. I'm going to love on you a little bit. I'm going to encourage you a little bit. I'm going to take that extra mile that nobody takes. And I'm going to be different. I'm going to be somebody that people could look up to. I'm going to be somebody that people would look at me and they go, man, Jesus is in you. I'm going to be that person that is going to be so on fire for God, that's going to represent God with all the strength I have in this world. Every ounce of mind, every ounce of strength, I'm going to do it to the fullest ability. I'm going to take that extra mile just for somebody else to know about Jesus Christ. And when words are needed, then you could say, tell them about Jesus. Your life, when people look at your life, there's some people that don't have the Bible, eh? I tried to keep it down. It slipped, sorry. Eh? All right, there's people that don't have the Bible to read. You're the only Bible that they could read. Are you that Bible if they open you up? Are you that person that'd be like, hey, read me? This is what Jesus is all about. Those people that don't have a Bible, that want nothing to do with it, and when they look at you, they're reading it whether they like it or not. Because you do exactly what the Word says. Your flesh is becoming the Word. Imagine if we had a youth, a young people like that in this world. How much would we be able to change? How much would we be able to twist? How much all this bad stuff in our schools, how much would they start looking up to us? In your own life, imagine how much things you could just prosper all to your friends if you were the Bible, if you were living out that word, if your flesh became that word. I always imagine Edgar. You know, Edgar was a great influence in my life. But what if, I've always thought of those what ifs. What if he didn't live out his life the way he did to me? What if I didn't see that extra mile, that extra love? People love me for things I did. People love me for things that I said, for the things I had. But I never had somebody love me for who I actually was. I dropped out of high school. Until this day I don't have my diploma. But yet nobody really liked me. But Edgar, he stuck with me the whole time. He stuck with me, and I'm like, man, there is something different. And imagine, I've always said, what if he didn't do that? Because I never had really much people doing that in my life. With the friends I hung out with, I know I wouldn't see that in them, so I don't know how God would work through them. God could do many things. I'm just saying in human thought. Right? And I look back and I look with the things I was doing, I don't know what the chances of that would be. What if you are one of those Edgars in a person's life? What if somebody is just on that verge of just deciding, hey, maybe Jesus is the way for me, but they need a push from somebody that actually believes in it? And not just says it, but believes in it and lives it out. What if they need, what if one of your friends, at least one of your friends, were on that verge is going, hey, I might accept Jesus if I see there's a truth in it. If I see that there's some kind of lifestyle in it that's not a lie, that's not a hypocrisy teaching. What if you have a friend like that and you could be that person to change a life around? It's amazing. I love the video that we had a couple of days ago with, that girl talking to the other girl, and then she went, and then it kind of went, and then at the end they didn't even know each other. And they left, and they probably, in the video said they probably won't know each other, but through her, all these people are getting touched. You could be talking to 1 million person if you're talking to one person. You could be changing 1 million person. You could be changing a nation through one person. There's these famous preachers. If you look at their story, not all of them were Christians when they were younger. Some of them had some rough styles. But there was always that one person that came by and went and discipled them and lived out the word. And now this person This preacher is getting people to repent, and through his words and through his lifestyle and everything. And that one person, if he didn't disciple him, if he didn't show what a lifestyle looked like, he wouldn't be talking to this nation. You could be talking to a nation by the way you live, by taking something spiritual, by what you learn, by your knowledge, by your wisdom. It's this beautiful thing. And if you start putting, and this is where the Bible stops getting boring. People read the Bible and they're like, that's cool. But if you could start relating and going, hey, I did that and it works, it becomes more exciting. The Bible starts coming to life because it starts working. It's a beautiful thing. How many of us in this place really need to start to pick things up like that? There's two things. I have one sentence at the very end. I'm almost done. I want to tell you two stories. And they're going to kind of give you an idea of two things you need to do to live it out practically. I remember when I was in Australia. I lived in Australia for a little while. And in the newspaper there was a picture. And this picture had a mom. And what looked like a man on a bed in a hospital, and the mom's, this lady's ear was on his chest, and that was the picture. And it says, a mother, I forget exactly what words, but it says like the mother listening to her own son's heartbeat or something like that. But along those lines, that was the idea. Now, and then the story went on, and it said that a couple of weeks before, what happened was there was a very bad car accident, and her son was in it. And her son was, not just her son, but there was a lot of people, and people died in that car. That's how bad it was. Now, it refers back to the picture, and it says that that man in the deathbed wasn't actually her son. But her son was a donor, and his heart was placed into this man's body. And this mother was listening to the heartbeat of her son. Right? She was listening, even though it's a different body, but yet she was listening to the heartbeat of her own son, and it works. Her son's heartbeat works. One time in history, Jesus gave us his heart. We were dead at one point. And Jesus gave his life. He died on the cross. And I always ask myself, if God was going to put his ear to your heart, to your chest, if he would listen to his own son's heartbeat, if you would hear that pump and that, man, Jesus is still alive, you would believe that. Imagine that. First point is you need to be one with Christ. It'd make life so much easier. It'd make life so much better. If you are one with Christ, that's the first point. Write that down. You need to have the same heart as Christ in order to live out a spiritual life, in order to live it out practically. It's amazing. It's a beautiful thing. Another one, this is one of those stories that my youth does not like, because I probably said it like 200 times. I'm telling you. It's amazing. I love it. And I'm going to say it again and again and again. It's a beautiful story. It's not a real story. It's just one of those, I guess you could call it a parable. There's this guy. We called him Pete. Our youth group called him Pete, so we're going to call him Pete. There's this guy named Pete, and he wanted a house, right? And he went and he bought this house, and it was a big house. There's lots of rooms. There's kitchens, there's bedrooms, but the one thing that stood out with this house was there was a big upper room. It was very big and it was beautiful. And Pete said that this is the room that I'm going to make more beautiful than any other room. It is going to be the room, right? This is going to be the best. The most money is going to go into this. My most effort is going to go into this. It's going to be great. Right, so he did this whole his whole house up, and he did it, and it was beautiful. He furnished it amazing, and he put all these pictures, all these nice. The paint's just glorious. It's just like you look up there, and your mouth is just going to drop. It's amazing. This one time, he's cleaning his house. Right, he's cleaning, and he hears a knock on the door, and he thought it was a neighbor, coming up with a dish, welcoming him. But he opens the door, and guess who it was? It was Jesus. It was Jesus. Hey. It was Jesus standing on the other side of the door. He's like, Jesus. He's like, yeah, hey, how's it going, right? He's like, hey, can I stay with you? And Pete's like, yeah, of course you can stay with me. And not only will you stay with me, but I want to give you the best room in my house. This is going to be great, right? I got Jesus living with me. So he walks him all the way up, and he opens the door, and he's like, man, this is great, Pete. I am so thankful. And Jesus is a gentleman. He's never going to pry your door open. He's a gentleman. He's like, thank you, right? He's always going to say it. It's like, thanks, Pete. You're doing good. I love the way you do things, right? And then he went in. He's living with Pete, and Pete's like, man, I'm loving this. This is great. Jesus is living with me. And he's happy, and then he hears another doorbell. And he's so happy. And he opens the door, and all of a sudden, guess who's there? The devil. And the devil, he's not like Jesus. And then Pete's like, oh man, he's gonna shut the door. The devil kind of steps in, and they start fighting. I don't know how Pete did it. But at the end of that day, he fought him out. It was like an MMA match, a UFC match. It was crazy. The bruises were there, and it was just wild. But I don't know how he did it, but he got him out. So he's all poofed out, and he's like, oh man, this is a long day. And then he remembers, like, man, but Jesus is living with me. So he's going up to his room. He's like, knocks on Jesus' door. He's like, Jesus, what's up? I just had a big battle over here, right? I had some elbows thrown. It's crazy. Didn't you say you're going to step in when things happen? He's like, hey, Pete, I just have this room, right? You just gave me this room. He's like, oh, I get it, Jesus. I get it, right? And then all of a sudden, he's like, Jesus, you could have all the rooms in this house. It's awesome. All these rooms, you could go freely. It's amazing. You could have all the rooms in this house, including the kitchen, right? And Jesus like, whoa, this is cool, right? Thank you, Pete. This is great. So the next day, Jesus hanging out, and Pete's kind of there cleaning again, does what he does best, and he hears the knock again, and he gets a little scared. He's like, man, what if it's like the devil again? He's like, oh, it's probably like the neighbor or something. So he comes up and he opens the door. And just as he was about to shut it, he did it again. He put his foot in there. He runs in. There's another UFC match. And it was crazy. Jesus did not come down. And I don't know how Pete did it the second time. I just don't know how. It was crazy. But he got him out at the end of the day. Right? He got him out. And he's like, oh, man, I got to talk to Jesus now. Right? And he goes up there. He's like, Jesus, you told me. Right? You told me you were going to step in, and I even gave you all the rooms in the house. Every room in the house was yours. You told me you'd step in, but Jesus is like, hey, Pete, you still own your house. You got the keys. I don't know. You got to open the door. You still own your house. Right? So Pete's like, I get it. And at that time, he understood it. And he's like, you get all emotional. He's like, man, Jesus, I'm so sorry. I should have knew this better. I should have lived different, right? I should have gave you my whole house right away. And he gives Jesus the keys. The next day comes. Now, Pete's doing what he does best, right? Cleaning. And and then he hears a knock on the door, and now he's just like terrified, right? He just can't. He's like, man, he's remembered the past few times, but this time something was different. He hears footsteps. He's like, right, Jesus owns this house, right? So he's like, Jesus is coming, right? And then Pete's behind him, right, seeing what's going to happen. And Jesus is not scared. He takes that door and flings it right open. The door hinges almost flew off this time. And then all of a sudden, the devil was there. Hey, believe that. The devil was there, but this time the devil was like, hey, I'm sorry, I got the wrong house. And then he walks away. Right? And this is a story to show you, if you give full ownership of your life to Jesus Christ, what it would look like. Most of us some of us give all our rooms, and it feels like we've given our whole life to Jesus. But when he tells us to do something, we're like, maybe not now. When he tells us to encourage somebody, maybe not now. And we have that one thing that we really grab onto. I'm like, Jesus, I can't give you this. You can have everything. You can even have my keys. But this is mine. I can't let it go. Right? Jesus isn't there to destroy your stuff. He's there to manage it. He's there to make your life better, not worse. Trust me, sometimes it feels like it's getting worse, but he's going to make your life lived out with no regret. If you tell me, a Christian that lived by the word, that did with the word, if you could tell me one Christian that regretted listening to the voice of Jesus, doing what the Bible does, if you could show me one Christian that did exactly this, I would need to see it to believe it, first of all. Because if you listen to the voice of Jesus, you will never regret what happens in your life. Sure, you may not get certain things, but those things most of the time will ruin your life. Sure, you may not get to go to certain places, but hey, one of those places might ruin your lifestyle. But Jesus is so in love with you. He is so in love with you, and He wants to make your life so much better. But the two most important things to living a spiritual life, practically, is to have the same heart as Christ and to give Him full ownership of your life. Now, if you forgot everything I said today, I'm going to put it in one sentence. Right? You can forget everything I said, but write the sentence down because it's very important. It's very important to know this and to understand this. You guys ready? Hear the voice of Jesus. Be the voice of Jesus. Simple as that. If you could live like that, your life will change nations. Your life will change your youth group. Your life will change your environment, where you work at, your school. Because if you could hear the voice of Jesus, and then you could be the voice of Jesus, you'll be like a little mini Jesus walking around here. People are going to be looking at you and go, that's awesome. I want to be like you. So hear the voice of Jesus and then be the voice of Jesus. And that's my encouragement to all of you here today, that it's not too late. It can start now, but it's your choice. Because Jesus is not going to pry into your life. Hey, He just knocks that door. It's your choice. You get to let Him in yourself. Right? So if you want this kind of lifestyle, if you want these kind of, I guess you could say benefits. I'm not trying to sell Christianity here, but you do get benefits. You get rewards and stuff. It's cool. It's a great thing because God loves us. We love Him. It's amazing. But it's your choice to make. And there's no better time to make that choice than right now. Going, I will live for Jesus. That my life, the rest of my life, will be the best of my life. Because I choose today to live out my spiritual life practically. That's my word for you. So be encouraged. I love you all my Boston friends. It's great. Right? So I hope to see you soon.